Hello everyone and welcome back to Make Better Wedding Films, the home of new ideas for radical films about people in love. My name is Ben, I will be your host. Before we get into the show, we've got a couple of announcements from our sponsors. The first of which is MusicBed. You guys know MusicBed, the home for the best music that you can license for your films, hands down. These guys have incredible artists from all over the world, fantastic music, all beautifully curated into epic playlists, either from your favorite YouTubers or wedding filmmakers. There's a huge selection of curated playlists on MusicBed for you guys to find music super fast. So if you aren't signed up already, make sure to hit the link below in the show notes and use the promo code MBWF to get your first month free, and it lets them know that we sent you, which helps out the show. Secondly, this episode is sponsored by Love Stories TV. Love Stories TV is a huge online directory designed specifically for couples to find amazing wedding filmmakers. Sign up for a free account and submit your films to be featured on their super popular social platforms. And if selected, they will pay you to create vertical social cuts. It's a win-win-win. So make sure you guys sign up with the link below for a free account on Love Stories TV. Alrighty, that's it for the announcements. On to the episode. Planning a wedding is stressful enough, but for couples in the LGBTQ+ community, there's a whole other layer of fear and anxiety that can be part of the process when they start contacting vendors about this special day. As wedding vendors, if we want to be a supportive and safe business for these couples, then we need to look with a critical eye at the gendered and patriarchal history of wedding traditions and how that still lingers in our language today. My name is Ben, and this is Make Better Wedding Films.
We started Mr. Theodore 6 years ago now. I say Mr. Theodore because that's how we launched. We recently had a rebrand, so we dropped the Mr. and we're just Theodore now. So we started because we just found, being a gay couple ourselves, we just found that there was nothing. And when I say nothing, there actually was nothing worldwide 6 years ago that catered for our community when it came to wedding planning. So I've always worked in the wedding industry. I've always had a huge passion for weddings in general. So I was super excited when it came to planning our own wedding. And then, there was just nothing out there that kind of gave us the inspiration that we needed. That teamed with running into some, I would say, small issues with some vendors here in Melbourne that had, they didn't know how to approach a same-sex wedding. They didn't know how to approach a same-sex wedding. A venue here was like, I'm not sure if we do those. We'd have to check with management. So there was that. And together with that kind of lack of content, lack of inspiration, we decided to launch Mr. Theodore. When we launched, I was launching as a wedding planner, so that was my into the wedding industry. And then within about 3 weeks of launching Mr. Theodore, we got approached by wedding vendors across Melbourne at the time to be like, hey, can you, showcase us, and can you spread the word about our business being supportive? And that's how we kind of just fell into it, really. And here we are 6 years later, still doing it. So
It's crazy to think that there was nothing available 6 years ago.
Nothing. There was nothing out there. Like, I looked to the US and there was a little bit out there, but just nothing that was really solely focused in the direction that we wanted to take it. And the stuff that was out there was very like cliche. You're gay, so you have to have a rainbow cake and you have to have rainbow this, and so no. We want a really beautiful wedding that reflects us, reflects our life. Just because we're gay, I don't want to have a big rainbow standing at the end of our altar. And that was kind of happening at the time. So we really wanted to show couples that, hey, you can just have a really incredible wedding that fits into the category of weddings that we see across all publications. Just because you're two guys or you're two girls doesn't mean that you need to fall into a different category. So that was really the approach that we wanted to take.
It's almost like the kind of like kids' birthday party theme idea of a gay wedding. It's like everything's rainbows, everything's like everything.
shortly after we had launched, we had a couple approach us, two girls who were getting married here in Melbourne as well, about the same time as we were. And they had said, the venue we're dealing with, they've just got no idea. They've got rainbows everywhere. And they've suggested that we do a rainbow balloon sculpture at the end of the altar. And they were like, it's just like, what's going on here? We need some education within the industry, which is, where we wanted to come in and help couples and also help the industry.
I didn't realize the fact that you, I guess, had the experience in the wedding industry before Mr. Theodore too. So, but you mentioned that it was really your wedding and your experience with your wedding that was kind of the catalyst for this new project. So, do you want to maybe, I guess, give us a rundown of your experience getting married and what that was like, and maybe why that kind of sparked, the idea for Mr. Theodore to take off?
Of course. Obviously, like I'd said, it was the lack of content, lack of inspiration out there for us to kind of really see ourselves within the wedding sphere, and then teamed with, not knowing which vendors were going to turn us away or which vendors were going to welcome us with open arms. But I also had the experience of my family are very religious, so me being gay is a big no-no, but then let alone getting married to another man was like, oh my God, that caused quite a bit of heartache and lots of headaches in the lead up to the wedding itself. So we had a lot kind of going on at the time, and we just didn't have anyone to turn to. And we got married prior to the laws changing, so it wasn't a legal ceremony, but it was a commitment ceremony. We didn't want to wait. We wanted to go ahead, and we wanted to do it and pave the way and show other couples that it is okay, just to go ahead and do it, but also to show the industry that, hey, we're here and we're just going to do it. So our experience planning our wedding was actually an incredible experience, because we were, after those few little hiccups early on, we really were welcomed with open arms across the board with everybody that we'd worked with and everybody that we had chosen. And yes, there were a few little moments there that we all had to work through this and navigate this new, I say new, but this new style of wedding, or this new, I don't think that's the right word to say, but, this new demographic of couples coming through. So, and the vendors that we had worked with had never done an LGBT wedding before. So it was new, not only for us to plan our wedding and to go through this, but for them to work with a couple that they'd never worked with before. So, there's no bride. So what does that mean? There's no bridal party. So what do we do there? So it was an incredible experience for all sides to educate and to learn and to create something incredible.
I can imagine planning a wedding is stressful enough on its own, and any heterosexual couples listening to this will know that if they've been married. But to have that, you're sort of educating your vendors as you go must be add a whole other layer to it. I can't even imagine.
And we had recently launched Theodore back then, so we were still in the early stages of starting our business. And learning from our experience and how we could educate and help other couples. So just little things like, one of the vendors that we'd chosen said, okay, so will your parents be walking you down the aisle, or where will your family be sitting? And, we hadn't had this conversation of saying that my family won't be coming. So that was a whole other element that we had to add to, just all these normalities, I suppose, that wedding professionals have when it comes to dealing with couples. It was like, hang on, we need to take a different approach here. And since then, it's been great to have that open dialogue across all our social platforms and online as well, with not just LGBT couples, but heterosexual couples as well. One bride I was speaking to recently, she was like, my family don't agree with my marriage, and I'm not gay and I'm marrying a man, and they're not coming to my wedding. So how do I deal with that? So these issues that we think are so LGBT related, actually, when you dive a bit deeper, they do apply to all couples. They can apply to all couples.
Yeah, I'd never thought of it in that context, but it's so true.
So it's been a great learning curve for all of us, I think.
I guess it's the kind of thing that is just, there's always constant learnings along the way. Even the fact around, like, I imagine some of the learnings you've experienced as you've grown, Theodore, even just in the fact that you changed the name from Mr. Theodore to Theodore, and because like, there's like language and subtle like subconscious uses of language that we don't even think about. We have to kind of rethink as we grow, as we learn, as we develop, and yeah, there's like obviously the darker side of like intentional discrimination, but then there's also just the subconscious unintentional discrimination, which we sort of have to work to unlearn too. It's all a journey.
We often get looked at, with our position within the industry, we get looked at as know it all, but I don't know it all. Every day I'm learning. I'm learning new language, and I'm learning things that I slip up too when it comes to being thinking I should be across inclusive language. I slip up all the time, but I think the big difference is, like you said, it's being if you're intentional with your discriminatory language, or if you do it, by a slip of a tongue, but then you pick up on that and go, hang on, I probably really shouldn't have said that, and I need to probably re-educate myself. There's differences there, and I think it's those wedding vendors in particular that are going, hang on, yes, I have said the wrong thing, but next time I won't, or I'll know for next time. I think we need to be a bit more easy on ourselves and be like, hey, we're all learning. So life is. It's one big educational session, really. So
I think that's great, because I think a lot of people, vendors in particular, listening to this who perhaps haven't yet had same-sex clients, might be listening and going, oh, I don't want to do the wrong thing. I don't want to offend anyone. But what you've said there I think is really important, because you say yourself, we're all learning, and it's more about what you do with the education than, not yet being educated. Like when you've had these things pointed out to you, how you choose to act from there on.
Yeah, it's being open to the education. We worked with a venue group recently that, they were like, we feel like we're so across it, but I don't think we are, and that, that's how they had approached us. Can you actually sit down with our entire team? And we were still in lockdown, so we sat down on Zoom, and I think there were like 15, their entire team, and we just had this open dialogue about, it's just, just picking up on little things and re-educating. So there's no right, there's no wrong. And don't be too hard on yourself. And I think that's what a lot of wedding vendors are feeling at the moment, going, oh my gosh, like you said, Andrew, we have to get it right. No, you don't have to get it right, but you have to be open to learning to change and to be getting it right in the future. But we also came from a time where, marriage equality became legal, and we were dealing with, it was 2 brides and it was 2 grooms and it was same-sex wedding. But now it's like, hang on, we've dropped the term, we've stopped using same-sex altogether, because there are so many different formations of couples within the LGBT banner. It's not particularly same-sex. There's non-binary couples now, and we're seeing that with the use of pronouns and being educated on pronouns. So we're still educating ourselves on that, and educating the industry on becoming familiar with new terms and just how couples identify.
Absolutely. That's again, I think, yeah, you're right. One of the things that's just sort of shifted in the last few years, because I was sort of quite familiar with the, I guess I'm not quite familiar. I was somewhat familiar with the journey of marriage equality in Australia, because New Zealand, and specifically Queenstown, became such a hub for Australian couples. To like, before the time of marriage equality in Australia, they would jump the ditch and get married in New Zealand. And a lot of my couples like that I shot down in Queenstown had that whole story, but it was still very much around like same-sex couples, and that language was used. And it was only only just in the last few years that, yeah, even the term same-sex couples has kind of become outdated, and we're kind of having to reimagine and just re-educate ourselves on all the different kinds of relationships. It's not just heterosexual and same-sex. There's a whole range and whole range of different couples that we're gonna
combinations. You look at also there's bisexual couples. So even though they might present as a heterosexual couple, they're not a heterosexual couple. It is just being open to everyone comes with a different label or a different identity, and being open to that. And if you don't know, and this is the big thing I say to a lot of the wedding professionals we work with, if you don't know, don't be scared to ask. So, and I think that goes a long way. If you're unsure about, if you're working with a couple and you're unsure about, what labels to give them, or one thing in particular, I don't know if I'm going off track here, but one thing I get all the time is it still okay to use the term bride? And of course, it's still it's fine to use the term bride. Use it. I think it's a great term. A lot of females want to be identified as a bride. It's the one time in their life they can be. We're not saying get rid of these terms. We're just, if you're not sure ask what your couple. They might not want to be referred to as brides, so then have that conversation there. And you've got to remember too, a lot of couples, for ourselves that are coming into this wedding space, and it is still so, heterosexual focused. But we are coming in going, hang on, we're here, and we're proud to be here. But we also do understand that, since marriage equality came in and LGBT marriage is such a new thing to so many wedding professionals that have been in the industry for so long. So we're also coming to the table going, hey, ask away. Like, we're not going to be offended if you get it wrong, as long as you're open to getting it right.
I think this is probably a good chance to talk, because we talk about like the fear of offending from like heterosexual vendors, like working with LGBT couples. But I think that aspect of fear needs to be understood from the LGBT experience in planning their weddings and booking their weddings. And I imagine there's a lot of anxiety that goes out into blindly emailing strangers saying, hey, do you want to be part of my wedding? Not knowing what the response they might get back. So maybe could you speak a little bit to that, Alexander, and maybe ways that vendors can, before a conversation's even started, make all couples feel a little bit more welcome and comfortable?
Well, that anxiety and that fear, that's a real thing. We deal with so many LGBT couples and ourselves included. And I was just saying to you guys before we started recording, it's our 5-year wedding anniversary tomorrow. So it's super exciting. But, I go back 5 years ago, we were emailing vendors going at the bottom, this little paragraph, this little sentence, so this is a same-sex wedding, is that okay? Question mark. And it's funny, 5 years on, we're still speaking to couples who are doing this. They just feel as though that needs to be done. So that anxiety and that fear is real, and I honestly believe it would probably be there for a while. I think we need to remember that, weddings aside, our community have dealt with so much discrimination across the course of, forever. So this conversation I had, aside from wedding vendors, I do this. I feel as though we almost have to do the same when we have tradespeople come over to the house. It's like, how are these tradie guys going to feel coming into a house knowing it's two guys? That fear, that anxiety is constantly there throughout our life, but we learn to deal with it. So, don't worry about us. But I think if you can do, as a wedding vendor, do these things from your end, and like I said, inclusive language is a big thing. Also, I see a lot of vendors do the little paragraph at the bottom, and it needs to be worded really specifically. But I really do like when I say, we welcome love between all couples, no matter how you identify. We're here for you. We see a lot, which I do encourage a lot of wedding professionals just to put a little statement on there. It really does, rule out any questions that couples may have, whether they do or whether they don't. Because too, with marriage equality being so new, and I say new, but it has been 4 years, but being so new, a lot of wedding professionals haven't had the chance to work with an LGBT couple. So, how are they don't have content for their websites. So, it's these little statements that really make all the difference. Come to Theodore and use, a wedding directory, for example, that ensures that all their vendors are supportive. And that's another way to, say, hey, we found you on Theodore, and the couple, the vendor then know, where the inquiries come from. Obviously, it's like, okay, well, there's a high chance this is an LGBT couple, and the couple do feel confident too, knowing that they're approaching industry that have put themselves out there, that aren't scared to say, hey, we're here and we support you.
That's a really good point you raise about the fact that a lot of vendors haven't yet had the chance to work with a same-sex couple or on an LGBT wedding as well. Because I know for us, we've been doing this for 9 or 10 years now. We've only just Friday just gone had our first wedding with 2 grooms, which was amazing people, such good fun. But yeah, and then like, even though we've got like questionnaires, for example, designed for female same-sex relationships, male same-sex relationships, hetero relationships, I still stupidly sent out our regular hetero questionnaire to the boys, and I felt like a complete arsehole. They laughed it off, which was, nice of them. But I just, it'd be nice when we get to that point where idiots like me don't make those mistakes. And I'm sure it's the little things that do affect you and add up after a while.
Yeah, and like I've said in this conversation before, it's acknowledging that, if you do make a mistake, you've made a mistake, and you could have easily sent your 2 groom questionnaire to a heterosexual couple. You know what I mean? So like, don't be hard on yourself, because these things happen.
And that's the thing, is that we set up all these questionnaires because we go to wedding after wedding after wedding, that these kind of ingrained tropes of marriage and, like a bride and a groom and a man and a woman, and these like kind of repetitive arrangements keep presenting themselves, and we therefore arrange our business and our language and everything to kind of like suit that, subconsciously or not. And so I guess through your experience with Theodore, Alex, what are some of the kind of traditions, tropes, gender roles of the traditional heterosexual wedding that kind of come up in contrast to the needs of an LGBTQ couple?
Yeah, there's so many. Weddings are full of them.
Yes,
we take
of course.
walking in with her dad, the first dance, the families sitting on separate sides of the wedding ceremony, a bridal party full of bridesmaids, the best man, the groom. Like, really, when you think of it, the weddings are full of true normative traditions. The great thing I'm seeing is, obviously online with our publication, we feature so many couples that have just had their, real wedding stories. It's actually a question that I put to my couples whose story I feature. How did you deal with, the traditional? I say traditional, but how did you deal with those customs, I suppose? And the great response I get is so many couples just go, "We didn't even think of it. What we thought of was like, hey, this is a really great opportunity to create something that is unique to us, to really completely remove everything that we've come to know about a wedding on our own accord with no guidance from anybody else, and really do what works for us." So it's actually worked in our favour. Like a lot of the LGBT couples I work with, it works. They all say it works in our favour because we don't feel as though we have to walk down the aisle with our dad, or we have to have a first dance. We don't feel any of those things that I would say heterosexual couples would probably, I have to make the entrance, or I have to do the first dance, or I have to have bridesmaids. A lot of those haves have been removed in our sense, and couples are going, hey, I'm going to do whatever we want. And it's, it's funny when you look at it, yes, it's all still similarly modelled on that, those customs. Couples still make the entrance. There's usually, in lots of cases, there's still a first dance, there's still a wedding party, but it's just that freedom to go, hey, we can walk down the aisle together. We don't have to walk down the aisle with parents. But if we do choose to do these customs, there's so much more meaning to it because we've actually thought this through. Like our wedding, for example, we both walked in with my parents didn't come, but my sister, she gladly stepped in, and then Nick, my husband, the day before the wedding, we hadn't even thought this through. It's like, oh, how are we going to enter? We're going to walk in together. And Nick's parents had said to him, hey, we actually really want to walk you down the aisle together, not because of traditional sake, but because for us this is symbolising us bringing you and showing our support for you. And my sister had said the same thing. She goes, I understand, the rest of the family aren't here, and our parents aren't here, but I want to represent someone that's known you your entire life. I want to walk you down the aisle and show that I support you and that I bring you with open arms. And I think it's just those small little, reinventing those customs and putting your own personal meaning behind things.
Love Stories TV is the #1 place to get your films discovered by potential clients. Sign up for a free account, submit your films to be featured, and if selected, Love Stories TV will pay you to make viral social edits for them to share on their hugely popular TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube accounts. If you want potentially millions of eyeballs on your work, then make sure to sign up for a free account at lovestoriestv.com. I think a lot of us, especially when we go through the motions of asking our couples kind of just what we think are kind of mundane logistical questions around just like the run of the day, you just slip into like, say, oh, so like, when's so-and-so walking you down the aisle? What time's that happening? I assume, you and the boys are going to be meeting, like greeting everyone at the entrance to the church or whatever. Like things that we think are just like about the timeline too are still steeped in all this, and these kind of, like heteronormative gendered roles. And we had one question from our audience, kind of like in relation to this whole subject, kind of about on the day and the kind of power dynamics they described it as, or especially around posing couples. And I guess because you often have your poses, used to being quite gendered, where like the man might hold the woman, or you might interact with one, with the bride different than you do with the groom, and stuff. So I guess, did you have any advice for vendors, for, I guess, who might be used to dealing with their couples in quite a gendered way, and not even so much a gendered way as because I guess, sorry, I'm kind of rambling this whole question, but there's a kind of a bit to unpack, because we did a post on our feed the other day around the word bride, and not so much whether the word bride is a bad word, but around how people in our industry use the word bride, because they use it as a synonym for couple, and because it's and it often sort of the subtext there is that you're only talking to the bride. She's the only one who cares about the wedding. She's like the main person with the wedding, and that whole attitude presents itself on the day too, and how you interact with the couple. You're more talking to the bride and less talking to the groom. He's just following along, etc. And those habits just build up over years. So I guess, do you have any kind of advice around whether vendors need to like figure out which one of the couple is more kind of be into certain types of poses, or whether to be just as even as possible, or whether to talk to your couples about this kind of thing or not, or like what's the kind of, I guess, way you might approach that kind of whole thing?
Yeah,
sorry, that was the most terribly asked question in the entire world. My apologies.
I completely get what you're saying, because coming into our wedding preparations and early days of Mr. Theodore, it was a question that came up a lot. And it was a fear that we actually also had around our own wedding imagery and our own wedding, just our wedding stop. And it was just like, oh, how does this kind of work? But I think the best thing you can do is naturally in no matter what couple you're dealing with, natural poses and the way that they, display their affection for each other, and there's going to be those natural, that natural chemistry. And I think the job of an incredible wedding, whether it be a videographer or a photographer or whoever you are, is to really pick up on that chemistry and work it out for yourself.
Yeah.
It comes across, and you will be able to tell. If you read your couple, you'll be able to tell who's more comfortable in front of the camera, who's more comfortable facing the camera, who's probably a little bit shyer and will tend to tilt their head away. If you can read your couple well, you'll naturally be able to pick up on who has more of that, that natural energy of being a little bit more upfront than the other. In every couple combination, one person in the couple is a little bit more charismatic than the other. Saying, generally speaking, but you can see that in a lot of couples. So it's working that out and seeing that. But I also think it's approaching, and this just doesn't go for LGBT couples. It goes for all couples. I think it's approaching couples equally. I think we really need to come out of that era of where it is all about the bride because, hey, the groom is just as important. If it wasn't for the groom, there wouldn't be, and if it's speaking about a heterosexual, if it wasn't for either or the other, there wouldn't be a wedding. So I think, and a lot of people in the industry are really realizing, hey, we are, this wedding is about the couple as a whole, not about one more important than the other. Just because the bride wears a big, beautiful dress doesn't mean that the groom isn't as important. And I think that's years and years of, that kind of those habits, I think, particularly post-COVID. I think a lot of people have, 2 years or 18 months to rethink everything. I think it's an important thing for wedding vendors to look at. So, and not even in the LGBT world, in the heterosexual world as well. We recently had a family wedding, and my brother-in-law said, "Hey, why is everything directed at the bride? It's my wedding too."
Yeah.
And, great couple.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. Like recently, like as you're saying, talking about that, an example stuck out in my head, a wedding we had in March, and the groom was way more into it than the bride, and that's a heterosexual wedding, and it's just really does, I guess, your couples a disservice to assume that one's going to be, more into it than the other when it's so often not even the case. And across whatever, combination of the ones getting married, it's just, I don't know, I think it's a little bit lazy for us as vendors to just assume certain things because it's a wedding. Like everybody, us as people are also nuanced. We have different senses of humor. We have different values. We have, we're introverts, we're extroverts. We're such a mix of people as it is before you even get to gender or questions of sexuality. So to be lazy and just assume, oh, this is how it's going to be, I think does a disservice to your couple, but it's also an opportunity to really give your couples a great experience. Because if you take a genuine interest in who they are, what they value, what makes them tick, and then from there you can actually, tailor their experience, because everybody wants to have a great time on their wedding day. And if you can give that to a couple, then that's going to be great.
And Andrew, you're so right in saying that assumptions, and I hate assumptions. I think as the wedding industry as a whole across the globe, we need to start taking assumptions out of dealing with couples. It's lazy, but B, it's no good for anybody, and it's not giving a couple a personal service either. So, and like you said before, when it comes to, the posing or the dynamics of the day, and the focus in the past has always been more on the bride, but, what if the bride doesn't want all the attention on her? What if the groom wants a bit more attention? So it's taking those assumptions out and getting to know your couple as people rather than as titles. I think that's really important.
Yeah, fucking love that. Yeah, that's great. It's so true. It's just like taking this, an opportunity to just rethink, the entire thing and every way you approach. I guess all of the habits you've built up that can kind of just become completely irrelevant, regardless of the couple.
We talk all the time on this podcast about habits being the enemy of creativity for our craft. And I think it's really good, like that just sort of stuck out to me just then, that habits are also the enemy of good customer service, like at the very base level of it all, like looking after your couple and making sure they're happy and comfortable and, having a great time, which is what we should all be striving for.
That's it. And no matter what role you play, when it comes to, whether, the creative industry or whatever industry you're in, it doesn't, assumptions, assuming things is no good for anybody. So, especially we're dealing with customer service. So that's a different conversation. But what you're doing, essentially doing with your couple, is you're representing them, and you're creating a day, no matter what role. If you're a wedding planner and you're dealing with logistics and timelines, or you're in a more of a creative role like yourselves, or a wedding stylist, or even the venue that's looking after the guests and putting food out. You're creating a day that's special and reflective of the couple. So don't go into one wedding the same as you would go into another wedding, and don't approach one couple the way you would another couple, because we're all different as people. So we're all different as couples. All our weddings are going to be different too.
So well said.
Right on, man. Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Well, I've got a couple more questions left, And basically, I guess just now for vendors who have heard us talk and have gone, yeah, cool. I want to action some things now. First question would be, I guess, what in your experience are some of the major red flags that LGBTQ couples come up against when searching out there on the internet for vendors?
Okay, one of the biggest red flags is the inclusive language that websites have when you're on the web. So if inquiry forms are still saying bride and groom, that's a big red flag. They're also, like we said before, like if all the marketing material they've got out there and all their wording on their website or on their social media is all targeted towards just the bride itself, maybe re-question that as well, like, rethink them as well. Like, I don't want to do a disservice or discredit any wedding vendors out there. But I think it's definitely when I see, for example, someone that's really just only focused on the bride, it's like, well, what if two grooms come to you? Like, you're not really – there's no excuse anymore. Marriage equality has been around for 5 years. There is actually no excuse anymore not to have your language updated, your inquiry forms updated as well. So, but also in saying that, be mindful of who if you're dealing with a wedding dress designer and, all their marketing is towards a bride, well, that kind of speaks for itself, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, when videographers, photographers, wedding planners, if it's all targeted towards a bride, maybe just rethink them and have a look who else is out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So sorry, to answer your question actually quickly, just to answer your question, as a wedding professional, just make sure all your language is updated and your forms, your inquiry forms are inclusive of all couples.
So you use language like your partner or your name, your partner's name?
So, partner one, partner two, lover one, lover two, like, just there's only creative words. There's no right or wrong way. But just taking those heteronormative terms out, the same as taking Mr. and Mrs. out of forms when it's not wedding related. It's just, and if you want to put little tick boxes to seem, it's not a bad thing. I've seen, are you a heterosexual couple, tick, LGBT couple, tick, you non-binary couple, tick, like just so that so there's more clear direction too from being for yourself as a vendor. Going, they are two grooms or they are heterosexual, you know what I mean? So, because, when you say partner one, partner two, you have a name like Alex, for example, it could be either or. So, and I think just seeing those little tick boxes that go, okay, well, they are here for us. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a constant evolution. Like I know a videographer who had bride in their business name and they've actually rebranded because they went, oh, hang on, this isn't really serving all of the clients that I'm getting. And he said, it was a bit awkward, but for the LGBT community, I'm sure like little things like that make a huge difference.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of wedding publications, for example, across Australia that have all dropped the word bride and use the word wedding. It's quite heartwarming to see. And we dropped the word Mr. from Theodore, not because we were only dealing with the Misters, but Mr. was more of a reflection of who I was. I was Mr. Theodore creating this platform. But then I thought, hang on, if you were a non-binary couple or if you were two brides, you might not feel that my title is inclusive of you. So if there are some name changes that need to be done, now's the time to do it.
Yeah, and I think some people get defensive and go, oh, why do I need to change? But if it's not doing you any harm, and it is doing others harm, then I don't see the big deal.
No, that's it. So just respect for people.
Awesome, man. Fantastic advice. And I guess, the last question I have is, I guess, for some of our listeners, where they go from here. So, I mean, I guess, because look, I've made my position on this topic fairly clear across like our social platforms and stuff. And as I've been doing that, we've been like losing a few of the followers that I'm kind of glad to see go now. And I think that our platform is now a space of videographers who are at least interested in working with LGBTQ couples. And so for those who perhaps haven't shot any LGBTQ weddings, haven't had any inquiries from LGBTQ couples, but I would love to shoot, those sorts of weddings, would you have any advice for them to start to get those sorts of inquiries coming through?
Using your social platform as a way to show your support, I think, whether it be like a statement or just, we're here for all couples. But also another great thing that a lot of our clients or a lot of our professionals do is, if you don't have content of an LGBTQI wedding, share a post from someone else, maybe not your direct competition or someone within the same city or country as you, but overseas, share some beautiful inspiration that comes across from, whether it be like a platform like ours or a wedding that we've posted, or whether it be another videographer or another photographer in a different country. Just take the US for example. There's lots there. Share some of those bit of that content on your social platform.
Share some Theodore posts, guys.
Yeah, share some Theodore posts. It goes a long way. It really does go a long way. So sharing other people's work, we're a community at the end of the day. So and couples do see that. If you personally don't have LGBT, it's such a mouthful, isn't it? Even I can't keep up with it. LGBTQ plus content, but you share, some beautiful images from a wedding that you've seen overseas, and share that. It actually goes a long way for a couple to go, oh, hey, if they're sharing that, they must be supportive. So.
Yeah. And for me, I think the thing that we as vendors might underestimate as well is, we as Bottle Brush Films are a really strongly values-based business, and we want our couples we want to attract not only like LGBTQI weddings, but hetero weddings that are in support of the community as well, because that's personally something that's really important to us. And I think that's something we underestimate as well, is that even your hetero couples the ones that are supporters of the community will, become bigger fans of your work when you take a stand for your values and your beliefs.
Yeah, definitely. We find that too. We find a lot of heterosexual couples use us, for example, to plan their wedding. We had a conversation with someone the other day, and she was like, well, my brother's gay, so when the time comes for him to marry his partner, I would love him to go, hey, I want to use your celebrant, I want to use your videographer, I want to, you know how family weddings work. And for her just to select wedding vendors that she knew firsthand were supportive and inclusive was a no-brainer for her. And she's not even part of the LGBT community. So, it's just, it goes a long way. So
that's, fantastic. To, I guess, hear your story and your experience through Theodore and everything, and just for us to kind of just, I don't know, just get a new perspective and just work on learning more, because no one knows everything, and no one's got all the right answers, and no one's doing everything correctly. We're all kind of just trying to do the best we can. So I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your experiences and your knowledge. I realize Theodore is kind of a bit of an invite-only platform, but if people are interested in learning how to be part of the Theodore family, what might they do to kind of go down that journey?
Reach out to us on email. I'm always on email. Send us a DM on Instagram. I love a good Instagram DM.
Yeah. Slide into the DMs.
A lot of people are like, oh, it's not professional, but I'm like, no, I love a good Instagram DM. If it's myself that read it, make sure it's appropriate. Just reach out to us and start the conversation. So we work with a lot of industry, whether it is full advertising that you're after, or even just a conversation. We offer a variety of services to just help industry feel that they're supported across, not only this topic, but coming out post-COVID as well. So, we have a lot of we sit down with a lot of people over a coffee or a wine and just go through pretty much what we've just spoken about here. So, give you a bit of a business health check as well to see that you are inclusive and that your language is right. And
cool, man. Beautiful. Alrighty. Well, we'll obviously have all the links you guys might want for all that below, but otherwise just slide into Theodore's DMs and they'll be able to sort you out. And again, just Thank you so much, Alex, for coming on the show. It's been awesome to meet you, man. Awesome to hear from you.
Thanks so much.
Really appreciate it.
Alrighty. Sweet as. Alrighty. Well, that's going to do us for this episode, guys. We'll see you all next time.